Every single morning, as the sun rises over Tucson, Arizona, more than 4,000 aircraft sit perfectly still in the desert. No passengers, no crew, no engines running, just rows and rows of machines, some worth $50 million each, parked on hard desert ground under the open sky. From the air, it looks like a city of planes, and most Americans have no idea it exists. But here's what nobody tells you. These planes aren't abandoned. They're waiting, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what they're waiting for and why at least one of those 4,000 aircraft will almost certainly fly you somewhere before your life is over. If this is the kind of content that makes you stop and think, go ahead and hit subscribe. We break down aviation the way it actually works. You won't regret it. And inside it lives the 309th Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group, officially the largest aircraft storage facility in the world. But here's the part most people get wrong. The moment they hear airplane graveyard, they picture rust, they picture decay, they picture junkyards. The reality is the exact opposite, and it comes down to pure science. Tucson was chosen for a very specific reason. The desert air here carries humidity between just 10 and 20%. The ground is hard alkaline soil, so firm you can park a 70-ton aircraft directly on it without paving a single inch. The city sits at 2,550 feet of altitude, and it rains less than 11 inches per year. That combination turns the Arizona desert into the single best preservation environment for aircraft on the entire planet. Metal doesn't corrode, tires don't rot, airframes stay structurally sound for decades. This isn't a graveyard, it's a freezer. Over 6,300 aircraft engines spread across 2,600 acres, larger than many American commercial airports. Maintained by more than 550 workers, almost all of them civilians. And the value sitting in that desert right now, unofficial estimates put it at over $35 billion in hardware. To put that in perspective, if every single aircraft stored at Davis-Monthan were operational and flying today, the United States would have the fourth largest air force on Earth. Just from the planes it keeps parked in the desert, the facility has housed nearly every famous American aircraft in history, from the B-29 Enola Gay, which carried the atomic bomb, to the SR-71 Blackbird, the fastest jet ever built. Right now, it stores B-52 bombers, F-16 fighters, A-10 war, and dozens of other platforms from the Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and NASA. At its peak, during the drawdown of the Vietnam War in 1973, this single facility held more than 6,000 aircraft. When an aircraft arrives at Davis-Monthan, it gets assigned one of four classifications, and that classification determines everything. Type 1000, long-term preservation. The plane is stored intact, no parts removed, engines sealed, windows covered, coated in a special white reflective spray to survive the desert heat. These aircraft are untouchable. They can only be moved with direct authorization from the program office that owns them. These are the sleeping soldiers. Type 2000, parts reclamation. The plane becomes a donor. Components are removed systematically. Landing gear, avionics, cockpit instruments, auxiliary power units, and shipped out to keep active aircraft flying somewhere in the world. The airframe stays in the desert until it has nothing left to give. Type 3000, flying hold. These aircraft receive regular maintenance checks. Systems are tested. They're kept as close to flight ready as possible for rapid reactivation if the military needs them. The desert is just a parking spot. And finally, disposal. When a plane has given everything it has, what remains gets cut apart, shredded, and sold to private scrap dealers. Some of that aluminum gets recycled into consumer products, the most advanced aircraft in American history, eventually becoming raw material again. Now, here's the moment in this story where it gets genuinely unbelievable. In 2008, a B-52 Stratofortress bomber, tail number 611007, nicknamed Ghost Rider, was retired and sent to Davis-Monthan. It was 47 years old. Most people assumed it would never fly again. It sat in the Arizona desert for 7 years. Then, in 2014, a different B-52 at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana caught fire during routine maintenance. An oxygen leak sparked a cockpit fire. The damage was so severe that Air Force officials made a decision no one had ever made before. It would be cheaper to resurrect Ghost Rider from the desert than to repair the damaged plane. What followed took 45,000 man-hours of work. Fuel lines replaced, tires replaced, fuel bladders completely rebuilt, hundreds of parts reinstalled by hand, 7 years of desert heat reversed by human hands. On February 13th, 2015, Ghost Rider flew again. A 3-hour flight from Tucson to Barksdale, Louisiana. A 53-year-old bomber returned to active nuclear service after 7 years sitting in the desert sun. And that wasn't the only one. A second B-52, nicknamed Wise Guy, tail number 60034, spent 8 years in storage. It came back in 2016 after a crash in Guam dropped the active B-52 fleet below the minimum number. Congress requires the Air Force to maintain at all times 2 bombers. 15 years of combined desert storage, both flying again on active nuclear missions. The desert didn't kill them. The desert preserved them. If you're finding this as fascinating as I am, drop a comment below telling me which of these 4 fates you think most of these planes end up with. And if this video is adding up for you, a like takes 2 seconds and helps more people find it. But the same logic, the same desert science applies to commercial aviation too. Right next door in Arizona, at Pinell Air Park in Marana, you'll find rows of retired commercial aircraft. United Airlines 737s, Delta 747s, airframes from carriers across the country. At Phoenix Goodyear Airport, more retired jets. At Mojave Air and Spaceport in California, more still. And during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, something happened that had never occurred in the history of aviation. Airlines grounded so many aircraft so fast, air travel collapsed 95% in a matter of weeks, that every boneyard in America filled up simultaneously. Qantas Airlines flew its entire fleet of a 380, Super Jumbos, and 747s from Australia to the American desert for storage. Planes from Europe, Asia, South America, all converging on Arizona and California because those deserts are the best place on Earth to keep an airplane alive while it waits. Most of those planes eventually flew again. Here's what that means for you personally. A commercial aircraft is designed to last 20 to 30 years. Many fly for 40 or more. In that lifespan, a single airframe typically serves 3 to 5 different airlines, gets repainted, reconfigured, reliveried, and accumulates tens of thousands of flight cycles. The plane you board next month at LAX or O'Hare, or Atlanta with the fresh paint job and the slightly scuffed seatback tray, there is a real chance it spent time in the Arizona desert waiting. Preserved by the same dry heat and low humidity that has been keeping aircraft alive since 1945, you just never knew. The word graveyard gets used a lot to describe this place. But the people who work there, all 550 of them, showing up every morning to tend to these machines, they'll tell you the same thing. Their commander once said publicly, "This is not where planes come to die. It's where they wait." And some of them, against every expectation, get to fly again. It tells me you actually watched, and it helps this video more than you'd think. And if something here changed how you see aviation, hit the like button before you go. See you in the next one. The video on your screen right now goes even deeper into how aviation really works in ways most passengers never think about. I'll see you there.